Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Two Bye Guys. I've got another great interview today. Someone I've been waiting to interview for a long time on this podcast. He was sort of there from the inception, from the beginning, in a way. My guest today is a bisexual influencer and entrepreneur whose career has spanned multiple industries, including sex and cannabis, two of my favorite things, and also a great combination. He's been a marketing director. He founded Fashion Indie as well as Socialite, a talent management company for influencers. And he is the founder and chief conspirator of the New Society for Wellness, or NSFW, a sex-positive play party and club in New York City with a focus on bisexuality and sexual fluidity. And he appeared in the same episode of Slut Ever on bisexual men that Alex and I were in that inspired this podcast. That's how I heard about NSFW. I've been wanting to have him on ever since. It's finally happening. Please welcome Daniel Saynt to Two Bye Guys.
Thank
Hello.
you. That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much for having me on, Robert.
You're welcome. I remember seeing that episode. Like, I didn't know who else was going to be in it when we filmed it. And then just thinking, I identified with what you said so much, even though we each only got like a minute or two. And I really liked the clips from NSFW, and that's why I started coming.
Yeah, that was like almost 5 years ago now. It's been like insane, the journey of like building this up and doing all this stuff. But yeah, I was like super early in our inception.
Yeah, I know. The clips from that definitely look different from what I've seen lately when I've been there. I can't believe that was so long ago. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Look how far we've both come.
Seriously.
Cool. Okay, so I really want to talk a lot about NSFW, but we always start with you and your journey, and I know yours is quite interesting and complicated. So first, just tell us, what pronouns do you use and how do you identify? And then we'll kind of get into how you got there.
Pronouns down for all of them for the most part. I think it depends on like the time of day for me sometimes, where it's like right now I feel this. They, them mostly. But yeah,
cool.
how I got here was really about kind of wanting to create a space that felt comfortable for me. I had gone to like a lot of, sex positive spaces and gone to a lot of gay spaces and straight spaces, and just felt there was something in between that was missing, something that could be a little bit more focused on exploration and, asking questions and learning more about sex. So yeah, creating NSFW as kind of a way to bridge that gap, but also as a way for like women to have a space that they have as much sexual freedom as like gay men already have on a regular. Like gay men have amazing amounts of sexual freedom when it comes to their events and their parties and things like that. And so, yeah, a big part of it was just creating a space where, women could feel comfortable. I could feel comfortable with whatever partner I was with, and it didn't feel like it had to be one or the other.
So I'm curious about like the parties and stuff that you went to before you created NSFW and like how you got involved in that and what it was like. And I guess also with your bi identity, when did you realize you were bi? Did that happen first, or did it come through this kind of sexual exploration?
Well, I think I always knew I was bisexual from a very early age. I would say like 13, 14. I kind of felt that attraction to both. And I just always knew that it seems silly to have to choose a side necessarily. I grew up super religious, so any conversations around sex was just not allowed. Any even thoughts about sex was not allowed. And you're constantly confessing all these feelings and stuff. And I remember being comfortable enough to like share my feelings, but it being treated as something that was so wrong and so bad and so like preventing me from being close to God. And I think through that, realization growing up and going through puberty and getting to an age where I was dating, it just felt like that was just wrong and didn't make sense for me. And so, yeah, I started kind of traveling the world and going to different places, doing all the work I was doing in fashion and going to international cities and, really seeing what was out there in terms of sex and places that people were going and trying to get into clubs and spots and going to the gay bars in different major cities and being here in New York and going to spots. And over 10 years, I probably went to, maybe about 200 events of like different types of sex related parties, and kind of just felt like there was something missing in the space and that there needed to be something that was community focused, was allowing people to explore, didn't feel shame based. Women didn't feel like property, which is how it is in a lot of spaces, especially swinger events and things like that. I wanted to create something new. So yeah, eventually created something, but the background of it was very much, I don't know, just feeling ashamed of my sexuality for a long time. I didn't actually publicly come out as bi until I was like 31, 32.
Same.
And at that point, yeah, at that point, it was like I was in the fashion industry. You're around so many gay men and so many people who are, trans and different identities, and just feeling like even within that industry that is so open and so diverse, bisexuality just didn't exist. There was no bisexual men. I didn't know anyone except for Alan Cumming. That's about
Huh.
it. He's like
Yeah.
the only one at the time that I knew of.
Yeah.
So yeah, coming out for me was very big on just visibility, like feeling like I'm at the top of my game in fashion. I'm owning Nylon magazine. I'm running Socialite. I'm doing so much in this industry. I should be public and proud about whatever my sexuality was. And yeah, in doing that, then came the concept of there should be a space for us
Yeah.
and there should be a space where we could feel comfortable and this can be explored and enjoyed and we can learn about sex and appreciate it for what it is.
Agree. I'm curious, like when you, so there, if you knew from an early age and you were exploring these things, especially in other cities, but not identifying as bisexual, I'm curious, like like, what was in your mind in those years? And also like, did you see in other countries or in the fashion industry, like, did you see sexual fluidity but people wouldn't address it or call it something and identify as straight? Or did you not see sexual fluidity and you wanted to see it? Was it very segregated?
I mean, I think it was very segregated, and I think in a lot of ways it's still very segregated. When you're in gay spaces, there's a certain idea around consent. There's certain ideas around how people interact within those spaces. There's certain protections to keep certain people out of those spaces. And being bisexual and attracted to women, you don't necessarily feel 100% welcome or 100% accepted. It wouldn't be a space that you'd bring a girlfriend or anything else like that. So I think there was a little bit of that element, and then going to more of the straight spaces, just the rigidity of how they focused on heteronormativity and just being hetero, and anything outside of women playing with women, it was really really not allowed and would just get you bad looks or make people
Mm,
uncomfortable. And I just felt like there was too many spaces where I myself didn't feel 100% comfortable, and I really wanted to figure out how do we change that, because there's definitely a lot more men like me, there's a lot of women like who are bisexual as well, and there just wasn't that. So I really just set out
yeah.
to create a space that could be allowed, and that sexual exploration was like the key. um and then eventually, you let the allies in, and the straights and the gays, they're allowed to come too. everyone's
Cool.
on everyone's somewhere on the spectrum of comfort and level of comfort, but I think it's a lot about just teaching people to be comfortable with other people's sexuality and how they choose to explore.
Yeah. Start with the buys and then let everyone in. That's a good motto. I do think it is like, I want to talk more about this, like getting comfortable in spaces like this and how to do that. But I also want to talk about that consent thing you said, because I mean, I've experienced everything you're talking about too, like both segregated types of parties. And I've been trying to go to more like straight-ish parties because the gay parties are really easy to find. The a good like mixed gender party is harder to find. And I have been to some where, like, yeah, they say it's queer friendly, but you get there and the only queer thing happening is some women hooking up with each other, and there's
Yeah.
no male sexual fluidity and very little gender fluidity in some of them. And so I didn't have a great time at an event like that, and I thought like, what's wrong with me? But actually I think it's the space that just didn't sort of let me be myself and express myself. um
Yeah, and I think it's definitely, people want to be inclusive. People, are very big on the idea of like, okay, we have full inclusivity and, all this is going to be okay and all this is allowed. But then when you get there, you realize it's really specifically for straight people, and like there's some
yeah,
comfort, but the comfort level isn't fully there. Um, so I think it's important to embrace that there's different types of sexualities, but unless you're building it from the start as like this is what we're aiming for and this is what we're trying to do, it's very very hard to create what we were able to create here, um, and to do it consistently. Like it's just too difficult.
okay, let's talk about that consent thing, because like a gay sex party is has totally different norms than something like fluid at NSFW. And not, I don't know if that's by design or just the way it is, or like, do you want to talk about like how what you've seen and what the difference is? I've talked about it a little before. I mean, there's
Well,
very little talking sometimes at a gay sex party. It's all nonverbal consent in quotes.
yeah, no, you have to definitely use your nose in gay
Yeah.
spaces sometimes. And I think there's certain gay spaces that have been better at it. Like I love the Inferno parties. I like what Pig House is doing. There's definitely groups that
Hmm.
are trying to incorporate more of that consent culture into it. And I think as younger gays are entering into these spaces, there is that conversation around consent. There is that conversation around body autonomy. And I think that's like it's really the first generation. Gen Z is the first generation really coming into the spaces with that already, or an idea of that. So I think gay spaces are evolving slowly, and there's definitely ones that are doing very well. But for the most part, yeah, you're nonverbal, and like a lot of the consent is based off of like, is this person going to tell me to stop or tell me to not do this? And that can create a lot of gray areas. And for men, that's great. And a lot of men are comfortable with that form of like blanket consent when they enter the spaces, and they assume the risk of that, and they go in ready for it and excited for it and about it. I think when you mix women into any equation, there's going to be different rules that apply and different safety measures that have to be taken. We can't have that type of behavior happening in space where it's mixed gender. Can't have that type of behavior happening in space where trans people are or non-binary people are, because that type of behavior just doesn't work. We need to have the conversations. We need to teach about consent, and we need to make sure that consent is part of everything that we do. So from applying for membership to buying a pass to walking into the door to the nymphs and the guardians and the people who are in the spaces, like you're constantly cultivating this consent culture, and then having a method of handling things afterwards when there's a conflict, when someone's upset, or when something happens. How do you handle that, and how do you take care of the people in those situations? But a lot of that is like because of women, and it's because of how us as a society have placed women in this place of the slut, or the or the Mother Mary. It's like they're really we don't society doesn't give too many other definitions in terms of that, and there's not enough protections. And I think for a lot of women, that thought of being able to be sexually free in a space is rare. There's that fear, unless it's all women's space, like it's very, very rare. So yeah, it's a big part of it. But I think it's something that the approach to sex, and the approach to stigma around sex, and the approach to shame around sex is why we need so many more rules than if we're just hosting a gay party, and it's like
Yeah.
come in hooded, no names, anonymous, and
Right.
find a hole, find a pole, and go for
Yeah.
it.
Well, so when I started going to gay parties, I really had to figure out how to navigate that. And as you said, use my nose and like say no. Like
Yeah.
if someone's doing something and you don't want them, it's kind of you have to give the negative consent, the lack of consent, and say no. And eventually I learned how to do that. But at the beginning, I was in some gray areas and some awkward situations. Okay. So it's good. But then like, there's also something when I'm comfortable now that's easy about not having to have much interaction. If I lock eyes with someone and you go talk to someone, you just go. So I guess my question is like, what do you say to like people who don't have experience with your parties, or maybe they do have experience in a gay space, who are nervous about the talking part and like think maybe it's unsexy or they might be rejected? Like, how do you get over those anxieties?
Well, I think a lot of it is about space design. A lot of it is about organizational planning around the event and how we teach people ahead of time. But if you look at gay spaces, you're going to have a bar, you're going to have a dark room. There's usually loud music, so you can't really converse, properly and talk without yelling. And the dark room provides a lot of anonymity, which is what people look for in some of those spaces. When you come to a space like NSFW, it's well lit, music's kept at a certain volume so people can have conversations, and we create ways for people to interact before coming into any of the play spaces. So there might be a host who's playing games with people ahead of time and kind of taking people to introducing and meeting people. If a member wants, they can kind of rent a muse and have someone who comes with them and acts as a buddy for them to talk to other people and like connect them to members that they know, and usually someone who's been part of the community for a while. So it's super comfortable for them to like get to know people. But the thing for here, and like what might be different from other play parties or play spaces, is like we are really focused on being a club where sex can happen, not so much a sex club. The
Uh-huh.
option for sex is there, but I would say probably like 30 to 40% of members are here and come for sex. The other 60 to 70% are here to mingle, connect, interact, possibly take someone home, and it's a little bit more about having that kind of club experience, but it being designed for conversations, it being designed for connections, and it being
Yeah.
focused on consent, which is very important.
Yeah. Cool. One of my later questions was sort of, I know the answer, but it was like, do you have to have sex at a sex party? And like, I used to think that's
It
what
is
it is. And
required.
if you didn't,
If you
you
haven't had
failed
sex
at
by
the party.
midnight, we are tying you down, and it is happening. No.
Well, that I might like, but
Well, I think, look, you have to consider like how we host things and how other groups host things. A lot of people are hosting things once a month.
Mhm,
Once a month is a high amount of pressure for you to go to that event and definitely get laid. Like, I'm going to spend a good amount of money. It's only going
mhm,
to happen this month, or maybe it's once a quarter, or maybe it's not that often, or the guest list is too small, so you won't get in. It sells out. And it's
mhm.
like, then you have this added pressure of like, oh, I need to play tonight. I need to make sure I'm like going there and ready to like do something. And I think that's really, difficult for people who are new into the space and they're trying to figure things out and they're not sure if a sex party is right for them. This space is different. It's like we're hosting things 4 times a week. That's always open. We're always available.
Yeah.
So it changes. The pressure decreases. And I think for people to have really, really good connected sex and sex that is meaningful to them, it has to be no pressure. And so
Yeah.
we try to create those elements to allow for that no pressure environment. So someone can come here, has never been to a sex club. We've had people who are virgins who are coming here for the first time, like never had sex, and they're just here and they're like trying to
Cool.
understand, like how this all happens, and they take their time.
Yeah.
There's really no rush. It's always going to be available.
Cool. You've kind of described the scene I'm encountering in LA now, which is like fewer parties, less often, more expensive, smaller guest lists, and so did feel like a lot of pressure. And
Yeah, it's like
but
I just
yeah,
dropped $200. I better have
yeah,
sex.
yeah, yeah, kind of. And I've been to NSFW due to the pandemic and moving to LA. I haven't been as often lately, but I've been like 5 or 6 times and only had sex like maybe 2 or 3 of those times. And some of the times I didn't have sex were like so much fun, even more fun than some of the times I did have sex. Like I think there was a game night pre-pandemic that
Yeah, yeah,
was really fun and sexy, even though it wasn't necessarily hardcore sex. And like another one recently, I went to a fluid that I just met some lovely people and like drank and chatted and watched other people do things, and it was fun.
yeah. I think that's the experience for a lot of people. There's like, I don't know. I think there's like the interpretation of going to a sex party, and we've been very good at branding ourselves and marketing ourselves and getting press and getting attention. So there is this like image of it, but we get a lot of members who will like join, and it'll be like a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then finally they come to something. They're like, I worked up enough courage to come, and then they get here. They're like, oh, this is great. It's like, but there is that fear. The fear and stigma is
Yeah.
still very much there for people in spaces like this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you say to people who are too nervous to come at all, even though they might think intellectually they would like it?
I don't know. We offer them panties and underwear that they can lock up. So, you can hide the keys somewhere. You're going to be fine. I don't
Oh,
know. I
that's
think
nice.
I think for a lot of people, you have a lot of people who don't really enjoy sex because they haven't had great sexual experiences. People who have had, negative relationships or have been in
Mhm.
abusive relationships or have had, early traumatic experiences in their childhood, which impact their view of sex and impact their ideas around it. So a lot of people, it's more around working through those own personal weights that they have, and that kind of weight of shame and that weight of feeling of not being wanted or being rejected. And it's like getting people comfortable enough to like release that, and kind of this being the way to release that. Like, hey,
Mhm.
you've made it here. Now you're kind of ready onto the sexual journey. Now you're ready to meet more people and connect to people who are more,
Yeah.
open-minded and interested in kink or tantra or anything else you're looking to explore. But like that's the first step. So I think for people who are scared, it's really just training them around the idea of like, just come. Like you don't have to do anything. You don't have to interact and be a part of, anything that's happening that you don't want to be a part of, but at least you can watch and you can see. And I think from that watch and see is where people get kind of their most education around what we're trying to teach,
Yeah.
and gets them excited about it and wants to be involved in that and wants to try those things. So yeah, it's more about just, ignoring that feeling in your mind that one, it's shameful, two, it's dangerous, or you're going to have to interact, and three, that you're going to be like forced to do anything you don't want to do. And I think once you remove those three, people come and they love coming, and they'll continue to come and come and come and come and come. Just keep coming.
Literally. Yeah. Cool. I do think it is like you kind of have to practice getting comfortable in a space like that. And yeah, you can do it in a low pressure way and not
Yeah.
have to jump in the water right away.
And we also have like Send Noobs, which we do once a month or sometimes twice a week, depending on the season. But that's a good event as well, where people can like come and, it's not a play party. It's really just about understanding what the community is about and understanding our code of conduct and how to like report things and how to like be watchful over the community and giving people kind of that, I don't know, that responsibility, of letting them know, like, this is your space. Like, we are sharing this. This is our shared space. Like, this is all for us. So, like, contribute and be a part of that and keep us safe and keep working towards that. And I think people come to Send Noobs and then right away they're like, okay, I'm ready for play date. I'm ready to go. And like, they get a feel for it. And I think that's important too. You need to have those like introductory events and like just have that there as an opportunity for people who are just unsure.
Cool. I love smoothies. This is true. I really love a smoothie with some peanut butter in it, maybe some banana, maybe a little chocolate, some oat milk, maybe even spinach. That's my favorite one. But they're pretty expensive at the smoothie place. And at home, the big, bulky blender, it's just like too much to use and clean to just make one smoothie. That's why I was excited recently to try the BlendJet 2. BlendJet 2 is portable, so you can blend up a smoothie at work, a protein shake at the gym, or even a margarita right on the beach. It's small enough to fit in a cup holder, but powerful enough to blast through tough ingredients like ice and frozen fruit with ease. The BlendJet 2 is also whisper quiet, so you can make your morning smoothie without waking up the whole house. And it lasts for 15 or more blends and recharges quickly with USB-C. Best of all, BlendJet 2 cleans itself. Just blend water with a drop of soap and you're good to go. It also comes in over 30 color options. I chose kind of an aqua blue one. I'm pretty basic, but there's lots of cool choices. There was some camo, there were some bi-color marble ones like blue, pink, purple things. Get a bisexual blender. Why not? What are you waiting for? Go to blendjet.com and grab yours today. Be sure to use promo code 2BuyGuys12 to get 12% off your order and free 2-day shipping. No other portable blender on the market comes close to the quality, power, and innovation of the BlendJet 2. They guarantee you'll love it or your money back. Shop today and get the best deal ever. Hey everyone, just a reminder that as of now, we are still trying to book spots for our Bi Plus trip to Maine in June of 2023. If you are interested, you can find it in our link tree or in the show notes, links to the Trova trip. I will be hosting a trip to coastal Maine with other bi people. We've got a bunch of people signed up already, but we don't have enough to make the trip happen. So if you're interested in it, thinking about it, can afford it, I would love for more people to sign up so we can do this and keep it going in the future. I apologize that this will not be for everyone, and I understand that not everyone will be able to do this. If you are interested in the idea but just can't come to the main trip in June, please DM me and let me know and tell me what you might like to see. They also have some more like hiking based trips out west that would be cheaper and would be like we're camping in tents. Maybe we should try one of those if that would be more interesting. Maybe June is just a difficult time. Maybe we want to go to Bali or somewhere even further away. Let me know if you're interested, because in theory, I like this idea of going on these bi trips. But, if we can't sell them out, we can't sell them out. It's okay. It was worth a shot. But the main trip sounds awesome. The itinerary is online already. If you're interested, check it out. And we need a few more people to sign up in order to go. In general, I just want to say I appreciate you all and thank you for putting up with a lot of these ads we've been putting in the episodes. I know we didn't used to do that at the beginning, and we have been a lot this year. This is really just helping me sustain this podcast so that I am not losing money on it. I do want to keep this podcast going, and I want to continue to shine a light on the bi community. It does take a lot of work. It is a lot of hours for me. And so I am trying to find ways to support myself and keep doing this work. So I appreciate you sticking with us and sticking through these ads. So thanks for listening to this. Thanks for listening to this episode. And now back to more with Daniel Saynt. So tell us a little about how like sexual fluidity is baked into the culture there, and like what's the spectrum of different events you have, because like I know there's fluid nights, but it's not just that. There's, I could answer, but I'll let you. What's the range of events, and like what kind of crowds do you get at each of them?
So we have play dates that happen every single Saturday, which are more all play. I would say in terms of the membership, we look at it, it's about 83% that falls within what we call the bi plus category. And bi plus includes heteroflexible, homoflexible, fluid, trans, non-binary, like just a lot of different things that fall within the bisexual umbrella, pansexual, demisexual, all those things. So amongst the membership, we're usually around like 80% kind of fall within that category. So it kind of builds that base. We already know that that's going to be a portion of it. A big part of our code of conduct is around, not yucking on anyone's yum. If someone finds something enjoyable, it's not your job to feel uncomfortable with that. And I think that's very important, especially for heterosexual males, to like understand, like, hey, you're coming into a space where this stuff is allowed, so your behavior towards that stuff is important as well. And as an ally, as someone who's supporting, this community, like accept that and understand that, and be respectful of that. And I think having that in the language of what you have to agree to before you join, having that in the language of how we talk to people at the door, having that ingrained within myself, the membership, a lot of the people who are involved with NSFW who are bisexual or who are open, helps, and it helps reduce that friction between people who are straight, and that friction between people who are gay. And I think on that spectrum, that's where we fall, So as long as those groups are respectful of our, way of being and connecting, that's great. For the events side, we have all play events. We have couples only, which has a little bit of fluidity to it. We have fluid, which is just, gender fluid, bisexual like party that's focused on that. We also do all male parties and all female parties. All female parties we're currently working on for January. We're bringing those back. We've done a couple things that are like coven based and witchcrafty based, as well as just femme and celebration of femininity type
Cool.
events. Then we have Frat, and then partner events. So we work with Mask Lab, which does a lot of recordings within the gay and bisexual community of like porn and adult stuff. A lot of adult stars who come through, who are members, who are part of that party, and that's an all male party. And now we're hosting a monthly Pig House, which is like another all male party that we have here once a month. And it's kind of how we provide for the community and making sure that we have events that can be just masculine spaces or all male spaces, that can be all female or all feminine spaces, and then can also be in the middle and fluid and kind of present that as well. It's about options here. So like we just try to continuously have a calendar that reflects what the members want to find and do, and just try to keep doing that.
Awesome. Yeah, I've had fun at a number of different types of events, but actually, like, I think one of the first things I ever came to, besides Ascent Noobs, was a frat. It was pre-pandemic, and it was quite fun. I had like a lot more fun than I expected to. The role play of it, I liked. Can you tell us like why did you choose that theme for your male events, and like you've kept it going, so clearly it's popular. Like, why do you think that theme resonates with like bi men or gay men or whoever?
I think like that event was really specifically designed for bisexual men who are
Yeah.
first exploring or first trying things. And we wanted to make it into something where they could be guided, right? And, when we talk about consent, we obviously do a lot of work with DOMs and dominatrixes. So what we do for that event is that we have a pledge master, someone who comes in who's kind of like the DOM for the party, and everyone who attends is a pledge, or it can be like one of the masters, and they go through and pair people off. And there's aspects of forced bisexuality, aspects of doing things and being told to do things, aspects of femininity, and playing with that and playing with those roles. And I think that works for people because like there's always been a desire for that. I think a lot of members have been in fraternities in the past, and there's elements of homoeroticism that comes from that they've never been able to explore and been able to openly enjoy. So I think that element's there. I think there's a lot of gay men who might be more more femme who want to explore that and want to explore being in control of someone and being the dominant and play with that role, or taking on a more submissive role and being that role as well. So like I think there's a desire there, like the reason that event has been successful in the past is like people want to play with those dynamics in a safe way. And this event allows for that. So that was really designed
Yeah,
for like men who are afraid to do things with men, but wouldn't be
but
afraid if they
want
were
to.
told to. Yeah, want to, but need
Yeah,
someone to tell them to,
right.
and it to be a little bit forced to like allow for that exploration.
Right, consensually forced. As a
Yeah,
sub top, I appreciated that, but and also like I mean that I wasn't in a frat, but I always imagined that kind of stuff. I think it was before I realized I was bi, and I like had those fantasies without really thinking about what it meant or addressing it. And there was a lot of porn when I was like in college and after that was like frat hazing porn
yeah,
that
they
I
have like
was
frat
into.
X porn that's really
Yeah,
popular. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think
Where
it's
it's
super
just like
popular
these
with bi men.
really dirty ass dorm rooms, and they're all like, it's
I
like put away the pizza boxes. Like, oh, all right, let's go for it.
I used to believe it was all real and it was shot in colleges, and then I kind of realized that like porn sets can mimic a college dorm room pretty easily. Like,
Yeah, they can figure that out.
yeah, I want to ask about like because I'm still figuring this out and navigating it. I never really went to play parties as a straight person, but like there's the swinger culture and there's that kind of swinging community which seems to be like couples of usually man and a woman who play usually together and swap partners and stuff like that, but and I've even seen some like play when in group play that's same sex, but it's still pretty heteronormative in a certain way. Like a lot of those people won't talk about being bisexual or will definitely like identify as straight or mostly straight. Is that different, or like how does that differ from what you guys are trying to create? And there must be some straight swinger couples who come to NSFW, but like
Oh
how
yeah,
does it differ for them from other parties? Or like what's the difference in the culture?
yeah. I mean, I think swinger culture, definitely still exists. It has evolved over the years. I think when we first started, probably 8 years ago, there was still big swinger parties and big swinger culture and kind of like stories coming out of those. And I was going to some of those spaces as well and just experiencing, the parties where you have to bring a female partner. And this is like what it is when you get there. I'd say like
Mhm.
within swinger culture and community, there seems to be more swapping, obviously less bisexuality amongst the men, less play amongst the men, and kind of like strict rules, whether it's a soft swap or a hard swap with other partners and what they're allowed to do. A lot of it seems to be like, I'm into your girl, you're into my girl. And a lot of conversations that might happen are usually between the men within those spaces. I think here, because there is, a higher amount of single people, and there's a higher likelihood of threesomes that are MMF or FMM, the women have a lot more say in terms of like how they interact. So when we find couples coming here or people who are familiar with swinger culture, it feels more like there's a mutual decision on certain things, versus how it can be in some of those parties where it seems a little bit more the men are kind of having conversations and like then we're playing. So I think the agency of who makes the decisions changes a little bit in spaces like this, and the option of, let's have a threesome, but it's not with another girl, becomes an option in a space like this, which I think a lot of people are looking for and they don't necessarily find within swinger spaces.
Uh-huh. Cool. I've also seen at some parties, I won't say which ones, but like people who are not transphobic, like trans friendly, but also it's a new thing for them and they're not used to it. And there's like this hesitation and these spaces don't tend to have a ton of trans people. Like how do you guys encourage gender fluidity and trans identities, and like how do you address that kind of culture and sort of help normalize that?
I mean, I think for this space, when we're talking about non-binary and trans individuals, a lot of it is more about outreach and trying to make sure that they feel comfortable to join. I feel
Yeah.
like for a lot of trans individuals, it's like they only will go to spaces that are clearly defined as like this is a space for trans people. We have a good amount of trans and non-binary within our membership. It's about 5% when we look at the numbers of it. So there are the members there. and they come here, they are able to enjoy the party. There's definitely people who find, are attracted to them and want to be engaged with them. And it doesn't feel as much as like a novelty, which I think is how it plays out in some other spaces,
Mm-hmm.
especially if someone's like the only non-binary, the only trans
Yeah.
person within a space. For us, it's like finding the events that make sense, but also aligning with organizations that are doing stuff for trans rights. So we work with a lot of charitable groups that, are specifically focused on that. We host their events here. We do things for them. We make sure that trans identities are included within like our performances and our muses. And we try to bring in more of that community in. But unless you're actively like outreaching and trying to represent that group or bring that group in or make them feel included, they're not going to appear. They're not going to show up to these spaces. So there's a lot of spaces where like, yeah, we are trans friendly, but it's one trans person and that person feels like the odd individual out, and that's not exactly how you create,
Yeah.
fluidity within a space. And it's not how you accept that. You have to, outreach, create programs. Like we offer free memberships. Like there's a lot of things that we do to make sure that that community feels comfortable within the spaces. And I don't think most spaces have that kind of goal as much as we like really make it a goal. Like, hey, we need more of this representation. We need more of this. Let's outreach. Let's get on podcasts. Let's do stuff. Let's get
Yeah.
media. Let's outreach to the people who are influencers within that space. Let's encourage them to come here. Let's like make sure that community feels welcome here. And more importantly, make sure the rest of the community understands like this is what this space is for. Like we
Yeah.
want this diversity in genders. We want this diversity in people. More importantly than anything else we do, we want that variety. It shouldn't feel like one group dominates within the space, and we really do work on that.
Cool. Also, okay, last question about NSFW. I also like one of those times I mentioned that I had so much fun without having sex was like, I think it was a little more geared toward kink play. And there was like somebody being tied up, and there was somebody on a cross getting flogged, and like you were eating someone's ass who identified as a straight guy. Like, just lots of people were trying lots of new things.
We were
And
trying things. We were
I
trying
thought it
things.
was so
I was
cool.
in a straight man's ass. What am I
Yeah.
doing? That's
I
so
remember I
risky.
was talking to this straight man, and he was telling me he was straight, and he was like tickling my arm and telling me he does what this is what I do with women. And I was like, cool, that's cool, you're straight. And then like a half hour later I saw you eating
Just
his ass.
me right in there. I mean,
you know. I guess that falls into the
it falls
heteroflexible
into it.
category.
Just
Um
trying to, remove toxic masculinity in the best way I know how.
yeah, but my question is like what's the difference between like a more kink oriented party and a play party? Is there a difference, or like what's the feel like at those kind of things? What do you get to explore there?
I think when you start opening up the areas of sex that you can explore, especially when you get into kink or BDSM and other, areas like that, there is more fluidity within those spaces. There is more acceptance for, different ways in which you might want to explore your kinks and might want to explore fetishes. So I think there is more of that kind of gender fluidity and general sexual identity fluidity that comes from those spaces and come from the events that we host that focus on that. So I think that's a big part of it for us too, where we are hosting events that are specifically focused on kink. It's like we're opening up a new audience.
Mhm.
And when it comes to sex and where people are in terms of how they're trying to explore it, like we always consider like the kinksters as like kind of that next level, the advanced level of people. So it brings in a lot more people who are just familiar with the lifestyle, more comfortable with it, and again, makes everything comfortable for everyone else.
Cool. I like those events. You should do more of those. And it's weird. It's like, in a sense, it is like next level. But for some reason, I actually feel even more comfortable at a party like that. Maybe because I'm just very kinky and queer. But like, I don't know if somehow there feels like less performance anxiety for me at something like that, because it's like, you kind of know what you're doing or what you're watching other people do. It's kind of more defined.
100%. Yeah.
Let's transition. Let's talk a little about the firm tech, which, if you all haven't seen, I did a couple of social media posts. It's this ring. There it is. You put it on your
I
dick.
got it. I have it
We can
ready.
say dick on here, even though
Are we allowed to
I
say
had to
dick?
blur it
Oh my
out
God.
on social media. I mean, they'll bleep
I
it
haven't
if I
said
put
dick for
this up as a
3 years.
clip. Okay, so you're a brand ambassador for the firm tech.
Yeah.
So tell us a little like how you got involved, and I've explained it on social media, but
Yeah, you've definitely talked about it
what is
before.
it? How does it work?
I mean, Firmtech is this new company that's working on wearable technology for men. It's really just a way for you to, in essence, track your penile health. And as someone who uses his penis very often, it's very important for me to track my penile health. And what it does is just like an app enabled wearable. This is the ring. It snaps on really easy. They have their own design around it. And unlike you have yours.
Um, uh,
unlike
should we try it
unlike
on
traditional
together?
cock rings, I know. Let's put it on and set it up. Unlike traditional cock rings, like it just breaks open, so it's really easy to put on and off. And it's also one of the only cock rings that you can wear at night. So what you do is like you sync it up, you put it on, and then you get results. Like I actually just pulled results from like last night, and it just gives you like nice little stats on how well your penis is performing throughout the night,
Ooh.
and lets you know how many nightly erections you have. It gives you a firmness score, so you know how firm your penis is at night. And also it lets you see if any medications you're taking might be affecting your penile strength, if alcohol or maybe diet is affecting you as well.
Hmm.
I think right now there's been this massive trend of getting young men, especially people in their 20s and 30s, onto Viagra, onto lots of pills, Cialis. It's just become so regular for people to just take medication for erections. A lot of times people are mixing it with drugs, which is extremely dangerous. I've definitely heard within spaces of sex positive spaces like overdoses happening from people taking Viagra and also doing cocaine, and
Hmm.
just really really dangerous things occurring. And I think this over medication of American men has just gone on for so long. Outside of antidepressants and ADHD medicines and other things which cause problems with your penis already and cause issues with erection, like having men starting in their 20s getting on Viagra, which is a pill designed for people in their 60s, very, very bad trend. And it's something that we want to prevent. So this is kind of a preventative measure. It's a way to prevent erectile dysfunction by knowing how well your penis is performing. The data on here can be shared with urologists. It's been like, kind of set and reviewed by a number of them and reviewed by a lot of doctors. And yeah, I just like think it's better to encourage people to not take medications to make sure
Mm-hmm.
their penis works, which is a normal function thing that your penis should work through your 20s and 30s. And maybe just
Uh-huh.
find out, how well you're doing in general. So it's a
Yeah.
health tool. And I think it's really great. And yeah,
Cool.
I like it. It's good.
I had no idea that my penis was performing at all at night. I have to
Yeah.
track this and find out. Uh, and yeah, I have seen a lot of the medication, and like I also wonder if that's related to sexuality and exploration, because it was for me. Like I remember right before I came out, I was having a lot of performance anxiety, especially with women, and I thought I needed medication, and I even tried it like once or twice, and it did honestly it didn't even work. Like it can't really get you hard when there's so much
Yeah.
complicated stuff going on in your head. And then what happened was I explored with men, I came out, and then I was fine with women again. Like it was really a mental thing.
Yeah,
And I but I
exactly.
guess what so there's that. And also what people don't really know is like I never knew what a cock ring was and what it did, and that it actually can help your performance in the moment too. Can you talk about all
Yeah,
that?
exactly. I mean, you can definitely wear. I mean, what's interesting is like the majority of people who buy cock rings are gay men. 90% of all
Right.
purchases are being done by gay men, and
Right.
they use it for performance. They're having sex on a more regular basis. They want to make sure they're hard. They want to make sure that they're ready to go. So the majority of the audience for the products of cock rings has been gay men. Straight men don't know. Like straight men, the only thing they're
Yeah.
marketed is pills. Like all you're marketed is
Right.
like take Hims, take this, like sign up for
It's
this.
not
It's so
part of
easy.
straight culture at all,
It's
and I
not
feel like
part of
if you
straight
take
culture
one
at
out with
all.
a woman, she's gonna be a little confused.
Like, what is that for? Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think like that's where there is some education that needs to happen. There's a massive
Mhm.
market of men who are being over medicated and given pills as like the only solution. And there's better solutions that have been around for a while. I think this one's great because it's just something that you can also track on the tech side. And that's really interesting for a lot of straight men to just know like where you stand versus others. We have this big competition that we're truly introducing in the new year. We're doing it with potentially Lioness, which tracks like women's orgasms with a similar type of device. And we want to see like who's the most orgasmic in America,
Yeah.
really just tracking different people and seeing how they're performing. But it gives us
Cool.
a ranking, so we can literally find like who's having the most orgasms, who's like having the the firmest cock, who's like getting all these
Wow.
like stats and scores, and hopefully encourage people to pay attention to their penile health. a good dick is, a key to a good life. If you honestly, like any
Uh-huh.
with diabetes, with cancers, with certain things, like penile health is what tracks it first. It's actually the first indicator. If your
Huh.
penis isn't doing well, it's usually an indicator of something else in your body. So
Hmm.
I think those conversations are something that men need to have, and not just go straight to medicating, to function properly. It really just takes a little bit of pressure and something like this.
Wow, I really love games. If you turn this into like a game or a contest and
We want to do a yearly
encourage
thing. It's
people to have
like
the
the
most sex,
yearly.
I will be participating and
And
having a lot of
honestly, I
sex.
want to meet the man with the firmest dick in America. I'd like to know that person. I feel like
Good
that's a good
luck.
connect.
Well, yeah, I like this one because it because of the easy on, easy off. I sometimes get scared of the firm ones that are closed, and I'm like too scared to put them on.
Well,
I
I
don't know if
think one
that's
thing that people have to
rational.
keep in mind is like the titanium ones, those cock rings that are fully metal titanium, which they
Uh-huh.
sell a lot of them.
Yeah.
Medical professionals do not have the tools to remove that from your penis if it gets stuck on, which means you have to bring in the fire department. So just keep in mind, if you're using one of those tools and you cannot get it off, like you go to the doctors, like they can't take it off for you either. They're bringing
Oh
in the fire
God.
department, the jaws of life to get that thing off. And I think, yeah, it's
Okay,
definitely something to
so
keep in
then
mind.
I thought you were going to talk me down from that anxiety, but I guess it's appropriate anxiety, and I'm
It's
doing,
appropriate anxiety.
and I
It's a
should be scared of them.
there's a few. Like I think
Yeah.
people's interaction with sex toys is it's a medical category, and it really just has to be like there used to be a show. It's like I went to the hospital from sex, or like sex
Oh
hospital. It's like all
God.
these really awful sex related reasons people have to go to the ER.
Oh God. That's crazy. Yeah. Okay. Well, I won't. I have one of those, and I've never put it on because I'm just too scared. Um, I want to ask you about one other topic before we end, which is my other favorite love, cannabis. And so, cannabis is kind of part of the NSFW culture, and it's been part of your professional career. Can you talk about like did it also play a role in your bi journey? Like for me, I feel like weed opens me up to different ways of thinking in a queer way. Like
Yeah.
how did it affect you on your journey, and how's it part of your work and NSFW?
Well, I think, plant-based medicines as a whole are definitely an important portion of, where we see NSFW going and focusing on. We just started a collaboration. We have our own cannabis line coming out soon, which will be mixed forms of cannabis with Damiana, with lavender, with cacao, and producing different elements, whether it's, being more comfortable to talk to people, having more sexual libido and being more excited about sex, or aftercare and recovery and kind of going through that. So cannabis as a whole is like just a very very sexual plant. Like I feel it's always been part of NSFW from the very beginning, of being open for cannabis smoking. And I think in my own personal journey, yeah, I would say like cannabis definitely had a play in making me more comfortable in sexual situations, and making me be more open to things that I wanted to try or do. And I think that's the same for a lot of people. Like not everyone gets that effect from cannabis. There's definitely certain people who don't interact with it well, but for those who do, finding the right strains, finding the ones that make you more comfortable in sexual situations is very key. And there's a lot of them that are known for that, based off of the terpenes they have, based off the THC levels, based off their CBD levels. So there's a lot of benefits to that. And we've seen a huge market of like cannabis infused products for lube, cannabis
Hmm.
suppositories from companies like Foria, really doing great work in like bringing cannabis into sex. But yeah, it's always been a massive component of the space. Like it just brings people together in a very specific way. And I think it's a very tribal, very spiritual way. And I think it's important to have that as, I don't know, like kind of like holy sacrament, really.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's definitely helped me sort of feel at home when I'm there, like, because I can just take the vape out or a joint. Like, I know that a lot of play parties don't encourage certain drugs or specifically say no drugs because you want to keep people under control and in a and safe with each other in a group space like that. But are there certain drugs besides cannabis that are sort of like enhancing sex and others that you wouldn't recommend that are dangerous?
I mean, I think everyone has to make that decision for themselves. I think when people come into sexual, spaces or come to parties in general, there's going to be some level of like using drugs and doing that as well. We try to make sure that everyone here is never overly intoxicated or inebriated, and no one here is like in a place where they can't consent or they can't make decisions. So there's a lot of like just watching over people and seeing their behaviors. For me personally, I prefer cannabis for sexual activities. There's not really other drugs that I enjoy as much for that. Sometimes like a really good ketamine fuck is fun, and just kind of being in a disassociative place while you're engaging in sex can be fun. Mushrooms have been really, really good for it. Damiana has produced, not Damiana, DMT has produced some very crazy sexual situations. I've definitely been to parties where mushrooms and LSD is the focus of like the evening and the week, and you have someone kind of watching over you as you're like engaging sexually with stuff like that. But yeah, you can't do that in a space like this. You have to do that really in a protected space with the right people and kind of build on that. But I don't know, sex and drugs, it definitely goes hand in hand. There's definitely, people who prefer that experience. And for me and for what I advise everyone is just in moderation. Like you don't want to, take advantage of that stuff, and you don't want to be in situations where you can't say no and you can't really consent. So it's important to be careful.
Cool. So if people want to try out NSFW, I know like sometimes how you become a member changes. So can you tell us like what's going on
Current way to
now?
become a member. Yeah,
I
I
always
mean,
have to
a lot
check
of
before I come. Like, what do I need to get in this time?
well, we now have member cards, so we have to send you over your member card, which means you won't have
Okay.
any issues checking in. You can get tickets and be able to come to events and stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of it is application. So there's an application process. We're at about like 10-20% acceptance rate right now for people who are coming in. We're working on our next spaces, so we're going to be opening up memberships for those spaces soon. But yeah, apply, take time to put effort into your application. We allow a lot of different types of people and definitely a lot of types of, sexualities and other things. So it's not so much about who you are, it's more about intention. It's more about, contributions to the community and what you can provide and how you can be a part of this and how you're going to add to the experience. We try to really focus in on like how people can contribute to making this bigger and making this better.
Cool.
So yeah, a lot of it is about that.
Cool. Awesome. We will put some links in the show notes, and also a link to the Firm Tech if you're interested in buying one of those. That's also in our link tree in our bio. Any other final thoughts or anything you want to talk about?
No, we got to get to LA soon though, now that you're over there.
Well, if you need help with franchising out in LA, I would love to help you set this up out there. I'd love to just attend if you guys get it going out there.
Yeah, we are in those moments right now. So we're like preparing all of our licensing stuff, how our education
Cool.
programs go out for the people hosting events, and in the new year we're expecting to be in a lot more cities. So definitely LA for very soon.
Awesome. I can't wait for this social sex revolution. LA next, and then every other city, hopefully.
Perfect. It's gonna be good.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. It's nice to finally have you on after we were there at the beginning at Slut Ever, and now we've come so far.
Anyway, it was great having. Thank you so much for having me on. It was really, really great.
Two Bi Guys is produced and edited by me, Rob Cohen, and it was created by me and Alex Boyd. Our logo art is by Caitlin Weinman. Our music is by Ross Mincer. We are supported by the Gotham, and we are part of the Zencastr Creator Network. Use promo code 2BIGUYS to get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr. Thanks for listening to 2 Bi Guys.
Okay, you can do this.
I know. Carvana makes it so convenient to sell your car. It's just hard to let go. My car and I have been through so much together.
But look, you already have a great offer from Carvana. That was fast.
Well, I know my license plate and VIN by heart, and those questions were easy.
You're almost there. Now to just accept the offer and schedule a pickup or drop-off.
How'd you do it? How are you so strong in letting go of your car?
Well, I already made up my mind, and Carvana's so easy.
Yeah, true. And sold.
Go to Carvana.com to sell your car the convenient way.